Hi, my name is Genieve Garay. I'll be presenting on chapters 6 and 14 from Phonics to Fluency. The first chapter is chapter 6, Teaching Phonemic Awareness. This chapter is the lengthier one of the two, so just bear with me. Okay, so we start off with the word phonemic awareness, or with the words phonemic awareness. And what this is a person's awareness of speech sounds smaller than a syllable and the ability to manipulate them through such tasks as blending and segmenting. This is, again, something that might be overlooked because most people just want to jump straight into phonics instruction, but before we jump into phonics, we have to develop that ear. So phonemic awareness is the strong predictor of early reading acquisition. So if they're lacking this, we need to target it. It provides a foundation for learning of phonics and the knowledge of letter sound correspondences. Students lacking phonemic awareness are most at risk to experience difficulty in learning phonics and learning to read, as we mentioned before. So something again that we have to remember is that if they don't have that foundation, we are going to have to try to catch them up. So again, some recommendations that the authors are mentioning for phonemic awareness is that these beginning readers receive explicit instruction in practice that lead to an appreciation that spoken words are made up of small units of sound. Researchers suggest providing an environment that encourages play with the spoken language in the literacy program. Again, we have to make it fun, something that's systematic but still engaging. Nursery rhymes, for example, that we've seen a lot in the lower grades, poems, riddles, songs, poems, and read-alouds are all helpful to develop phonemic awareness, and that's another reason why we have them so much in the lower grades, because before they're actually recognizing the letters, they need to develop those sounds for them before. Even though we have this going on in the lower grades, 20% of students that have not acquired enough phonemic awareness that will transfer to phonics instruction by the middle of first grade are still around. So it's imperative that there is more systematic instruction and engagement with language early in students' home, preschool, and kindergarten classes. So we're thinking by mid first grade, if they're still having trouble with this, then there's something that has to be done even more before. So even as far as before they even come into school, when they're in preschool. And again, kindergarten has to hit them hard with phonemic awareness so that they're ready. Phonemic awareness and letter knowledge are two good school entry predictors of how successful a child will be during the first 2 years of school, and which suggest practice preschool literacy experiences are quite powerful. So again, if they're coming into school and they have a strong sense of phonemic awareness already, and they already identify some letters, those are some pretty strong predictors that they're going to be good readers. And again, if they're lacking this, then you know that they're probably going to be struggling readers. The book also gives some instructional guidelines as far as phonemic awareness. So focus on, when you're introducing phonemic awareness like a concept, focus on 2 phoneme manipulations at one time. So you don't have to bring all sorts of the phonemic awareness manipulations already, just like maybe 2. Assess before teaching, because many children may not need the instruction. So if you're going to do a lot of phonemic awareness instruction, yet not everyone needs it, then you should actually be moving on to phonics. Teach children in small groups. Again, especially for those that are falling behind, that are part of that 20% we mentioned, you want to be getting them during small groups systematically and continuously. Keep the sessions brief. You don't want to spend a whole day doing phonemic awareness because you're going to belabor that. And if we belabor that, then you're not moving them ahead again to where they can get. And it's just going to be like hitting a wall. So what they recommend is 20 hours over the entire school year, not, in a week or a month. Make the activities as relevant and exciting as possible for optimal learning, and this is where it's got to be fun. Remember that they're kids, and phonemic awareness is one of those things that can be a lot of fun. When you're assessing phonemic awareness, we have to see how they stand. And one test that they mention is this also happens at school entrance, but they mentioned the Yup-Singer test of phoneme segmentation. So what that is that they give students 22 words, and they're going to have to segment them into constituent sounds. For example, if the teacher says back, the student is going to say and that's how you're going to have to segment the word. This phonemic awareness measured by this instrument, the Yapsinger, is correlated with students' reading and spelling achievement through grade 6. So again, depending on how well they do on this test or how poorly, that's going to determine their reading and spelling achievement. Most second semester kindergarten students achieve a mean score of 12, so that's generally what students get. However, if they score 5 or below, then additional phonemic awareness development opportunities are needed. Then that means that they're part of that 20% that we had talked about, and this is a good kind of gauge. So again, I just put in our little picture of what we're expecting them to do. Segmenting our words is one quick way to tell. Some implications from this same test, the Yapsinger, beyond kindergarten, because again, if we don't expect only kindergartners to have trouble with phonemic awareness, especially if they're struggling readers in grades beyond, first and up, then we know that phonemic awareness was probably something that they were missing. So, administer in reading centers to elementary level struggling readers. You can put a phonemic awareness center and tasks that they have to do, maybe a series of words that they have to segment, just like they did in that Yapsinger test. Second grade and above, if they score at 10 or 15, this is not unusual again, especially if mastering phonics was pushed more and more intensely before they were developmentally ready. So what that means is that they just kept giving phonics again, but they didn't develop the ear before. So if they're seeing the grapheme or the letters, then naturally they're not going to make those connections because they might not even recognize the sounds that go with it. If they didn't recognize the sound sh, they're not going to know that it's SH. So they mentioned the other section of the book was, for this chapter, is teaching and nurturing phonemic awareness through text play and writing. For most students, phonemic awareness is nurtured more than it is taught. Children learn language sounds as they talk, sing, and play at home. It's something very natural. As we language, we develop that ear and that tongue that's going to be listening and producing these sounds. Teachers can nurture phonemic awareness through enjoyable, playful, and engaging ways at school. Through the rhymes, chants, songs, for example, the nursery rhymes that we mentioned earlier, the jump rope chants, poetry, and songs. Rhyming text daily also help to develop that sensitivity to sound. So we have, for example, the nursery rhymes that you can bring in, say, in the morning, or we have them, for example, in our ELD block, where they start off with a poem, a rhyme, or a chant, because we're trying to develop the second language cadence and fluency orally. And for example, the chants like Cinderella, yet dressed in yellow, went upstairs to kiss her fellow, made a mistake and kissed a snake. How many doctors did it take? 1, 2, and they start with a jump rope. So again, it's just going to be fun. They keep pressing that it should be something engaging, something fun. You don't want to bore the kids, especially if they're struggling already. Some other suggestions they give, as they're older, you might want to go into more sophisticated texts. For example, the poems, a little bit more sophisticated poems, the tongue twisters, like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers and so on. Popular song lyrics, whatever song's popular at the time, bring in the lyrics and start going through that. Even rap songs, because they have that rhythm and they can try to speak in the rhythm. But again, we're trying to be able to get them to speak and communicating complete sentences, because that's going to show you that they have that oral language development that's going to get them ready for reading. They also mentioned something called hanky pinkies, which I was new to, and they're riddles. And so they're riddles with answers that are 2 or more rhyming words. For example, if the teacher asks, what vehicle does a quacker drive? It would be the duck's truck. You can also have a little bit of spin on this for alliteration. For example, you can say a wet pup is a drenched dog, and then, or if you want to go simple, if you want to go rhyming, you could say a soggy doggy, and then go into alliteration, drenched dog. Something else they mentioned with writing, we might be familiar with approximations, and that's what this is calling. Writing in which students use their knowledge of sound symbol correspondence. That means sound symbol correspondence would be, for example, if I say back, I know that b would be the letter B, A would be the letter A, and I might say sound K there, but at least I'm using that sound letter correspondence. That's what that means. Also known as invented or phonemic spelling, is a powerful way to develop both phonemic awareness and basic phonics knowledge. So that's where you might see the invented spelling. You might be familiar with seeing it in your students' writing as well. And again, those are your approximations. Writing words from knowledge of language sounds, you're practicing this way. You're practicing segmenting, you're practicing order, and you're practicing blending all at once while you're doing your invented spelling. Children move rapidly from the invented spelling to the conventional spelling. So as long as they're doing this, they're on the right track. That's something that is expected from all learners. First grade children should using invented spelling. We're actually more fluent writers and better word recognizers than those taught through traditional curriculum. So if you have, for example, a student writing and you're telling them, no, now think of the word back, and they spell it B-A-K, and you say, no, let's spell it correctly, B-A-C-K, and every single word has to be spelled correctly. It's going to be a little bit harder. Like, let them try that invented spelling and just let them express themselves first, and then you can come back and coach them later on. Something else that we've mentioned about that 20%, students who have not developed sufficient phonemic awareness skills and are not ready for phonics, they're going to need more specific instruction. So this is going to be, again, the more focused activities that you're still going to do for phonemic awareness. As per YOP 1992, and the National Reading Panel of 2000, conceptual levels of activity to develop are, these are the things that they want us to develop: sound matching, sound isolation, sound blending, sound substitution, sound segmentation. So we're going to go over them just a little bit more in depth. Sound matching, you can do this just matching words to sounds. For example, words that begin with P, and you might just give them the, and they have to match the sounds, okay? So I have Piper, I have plant, and so on. And that's what they mean by matching. You can also identify the words with a common sound. If I say, for example, Piper, plant, tree, which two words have the same sound? Piper, plant, and that's what you're after. That's what matching would be. Sound isolation, this is where you're going to determine either the beginning, middle, ending sounds in words. For example, if I say plant, and I would say, what's the first sound in plant? P, okay, and what's the final sound in plant? T, you know, so if I want to say bad, what's the middle sound in bad? Ah, you know, that's what that means, sound isolation. Isolate those sounds. Blending, this is when they synthesize the sounds in order to make a word. This is what they're doing when they're reading, when they're decoding, when they're lifting those words off the print. That's what they're actually doing. For example, in, they're actually blending the sounds. Word sound substitution. This one's a little bit harder for a lot of students as we're going this way. Subtracting and adding and substituting those sounds from existing words. This is going to require segmentation, and then they re-blend what they have left of sounds. So you can try it with class names. For example, if I have, okay, we're studying the letter T. Let's take the names from our class and let's change them to begin with the letter T. For example, if I have Ruby, begin with T. Tubi, if I have Brian, begin with T. Try it, and you have just play along with the class. And that's a sound substitution. You can also do that with final sounds, middle sounds, or even when you have the two letter blends, you can also change those too, depending what you're studying. For sound segmentation, determine all the sound constituents in a word. For example, you can do by onset rhyme and then the individual sounds, go that way. For example, if I have the word bad, my onset would be B, my rhyme would be add. So let's see, if I have frog, my onset would be fr, and the rhyme would be og. I can go that way, and then I can go to individual sounds. Ready now? Bad, b, a, d. Frog, f, a, g. And you can go that way. That's what the segmentation is. They also mentioned something called turtle talk. This is more of a strategy that goes with this one, for them to hear the sounds. The teacher demonstrates how a turtle might talk and say, well, they move very slowly, so how might a turtle talk? Well, they'll probably talk very slowly. This is to help them hear the language sounds more distinctly, because if they don't hear them, they might not be able to identify them when they're seeing them and reading, and they might not be able to spell them correctly when they're trying to spell them because they don't hear the sounds. So you slow it down, and then you have the students try. For example, if I say something like the word cat, how might a turtle say cat? Cat. Now you try it, boys and girls. Cat, and you have them go ahead and try it. And this is just developing that ear for every single phoneme. They also recommend a routine. For example, like the 6-step one. This has to be with whole meaningful text. So you find a shared reading text. You're going to highlight any rhyming words. For example, if you have Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider, sat down beside her, and frightened Miss Muffet away. And you identify those rhyming words, right? Select several rhyme patterns or the word families. For example, away. Maybe they might also think, play, and they can also come up with other ones that might not even be in there. Read the predictable book. Integrate some of the rhyme cards. So right there, I would probably bring in from away, play, day, say, and I can bring in some other sets there too. And have the students create new rhymes and rhymes. Again, like if they say play, day, and they come up with clay, and they can come up with now a new story, and we can write a new story just from that little part that we found. And whatever we write now that's new, we reread that newly generated book. We create a little book, we put it in the classroom library, and they can practice, and they're already gonna be reading like independent readers. When you have, like, say, a center for your reading, remember, try not to put anything that's too difficult for them. It's better if it's something that they've already practiced to get them to actually read. They also recommend adding a degree of concreteness using actual physical objects, like or a morning stretch, like actual tangible things. Because it's so abstract, you try to make it somehow concrete, because we know in teaching you go from concrete to abstract, right? Phonemic awareness is abstract already, so how do you make it concrete before you leave them off on their own? Sorting sounds. You can have picture sorts. For example, I might have all the words that begin with O, and I might just have a picture of an octopus or an opossum or anything else that way. And I might have some sorts that begin with A, like apple, like and, or whatever picture it would be. And then they have to just sort the pictures. You don't necessarily have to have the print, but they're sorting that way by sounds already. Okay, so that was chapter 6. The other one is chapter 14, and this was all word games. So I'll mention them. I won't go too much in detail. That way I can at least show you one of them and one of the other strategies from the other chapter too. So they kind of pose this question: how do we achieve word recognition proficiency? As adults, we lift those words off the page naturally, but how did we become this way? We don't have to decode every single word. Occasionally we come across a new one, but the answer is through those repeated exposures. We've seen these words so many times through constant books. So the goal of any word recognition program is for readers to recognize nearly all those words automatically or by sight, like we do. Learners of average intelligence, they said, require 35 exposures to a word before it becomes an easily recognized word. And those less able learners require about 55 exposures. That's 20 more exposures if they are struggling, right? So most of the exposure to words that leads to sight vocabulary growth encountered in reading, for example, come from those Dolch words, those the Fry instant word list. These are going to be especially helpful because they already come out in the text so many times, and so they see them quite often. But this brings us to the next point. If we want them to see these words a lot, well, they need that large amount of contextual reading for those real purposes. That would be our good foundation for good word recognition reading program. So it's that wide reading that we're after. So I know many of us have probably sat with our families playing word games. I love to play Scrabble with my sister. We can get really competitive in there. We also used to be, we used to like playing that upwards game so that you can create words, and it's fun to compete. So if we get excited playing word games, and we're adults, well, just like adults love to play word games like Scrabble, Wheel of Fortune, or Taboo, students can enjoy word games that are not only fun, but will enhance their word exposure for word recognition, and for understanding. So the whole chapter was just suggested word games. And I'll just give you like a snippet, but then we'll go into one in depth. They mentioned Wordo, and really all I have to tell you is that Wordo is like bingo. They just use words, they give them the word list. They can use spelling words, words from a specific word recognition lessons that you've already done, and put a word bank in there or various content areas, and you want to have the Wordo game. It would look something like this. If you're more advanced students, then you can have more cells available to write more words. Word War, this is like the game War, where students are going to use a deck of cards, and they're going to have to try to see who can decode or pronounce those longer words, and they get the point. That's how they win. The pickup sticks, so you have your popsicle sticks, and the words that you want practice, you put them in there. Here I know it says bang, but really the one that says zap, you want it this way also. So you're picking up the sticks, you're reading them, and whoever brings zap out, that means the game stops, and you start adding up how many words you have, and you win. Match, this is like concentration, where you try to match with a partner, and or you just have to do like matching cards like this, where you put them all face down and try to match the word, and then of course you collect, and whoever wins, whoever has the most wins. Go Fish, this is just a variation of the classic card game Go Fish, but this time you're doing this with words that you want them to read. Make words with cubes. You can use blank cubes. Sometimes they sell those that you can blow up like a little ball, and you can also use the die they mentioned. You just kind of rub out the little black dots and put letters on them, and then they just roll them and try to create, say that it rolls to the letter C. Then I can go ahead and say candy, cat, and so on, and try to generate from there. Word maker cups. These you can use also it's an activity for blending onset and rhyme that we had talked about. I'll go more in depth with that one later on. Categories. This is going to be good for word patterns. This is a little bit tougher, but it's good to challenge them. So you use the grid with the desired patterns that you want at the top, and then the consonants and consonant blends on the left. So whatever patterns like at, ick, at, it, and then the actual, initial letter, t, p, m, d, and then the way that they can actually make from each category. Okay? Sentencing, just think of this one like Wheel of Fortune and Hangman, but you actually have to use sentences. So instead of every blank is a letter, every blank would be a word, and you can have the groups competing, and whoever gets the sentence. You can even pull a sentence from one of your textbooks, and that's what they have to guess. Maybe you can have them reference. It's just so they can have a good time with it. Word sketches, this is like Pictionary. So you have your word, and somebody has to sketch it. The teams compete, and it's a lot of fun. Word theater, this is the classroom version of charades, and we love charades, so the kids do too. You can see them actually giggling, having a good time with it too. Word part rummy, you use cards with words like affixes and roots, and you just have to create words. So you take from one of the affixes and the root word, or it can have a prefix, suffix, and the root word, and see how many words that they can create and get creative with it. All of these word games, they suggest, for example, if kids come in early, you need something to do, or at the end of the day when they're waiting to be picked up from the bus, you can pull those games out and have them practice then. Also, you can have it in the center, just as long as it's done naturally, they'll look forward to doing it too, especially if they see like it's an incentive. So, the three strategies that I'm going to share, one is from the phonemic awareness chapter, one is from the word games chapter, one is one of my own that I used to like to use. When we're talking about using that degree of concreteness, because phonemic awareness is abstract, you might be familiar with the Elkonin boxes to practice the hearing the discrete sounds. So students push a marker into the boxes, one for each sound, and I'll show you that in a bit, just so that to make sure that we understand. You're going to have some boxes, you're going to pay attention to sounds. As students develop familiarity with the written letters, they can write individual letters or the letter combinations that represent individual sounds in words. So let's see what that looks like. If I have this, I would ask students, well, what is this? Miss, that's a cat. Okay, so very good, it's a cat. So now maybe I can even add the turtle talk here. Let's say cat, cat. and stress those sounds, right? So then let's see, what sounds would cat have? Well, k, a, t. And as we're trying that, you can be pushing a circle, and I would have, for example, these counters. I would keep my baggie ready. And so with my baggie, I would actually give some students, like, here you go, give them all. And they would all have their Elkonin boxes there. So, let's see, cat. And we would push in a, t, one for every sound, right? So say that we wanted to, we've already done this. And I think, you know what? I think they're actually ready to start writing this, not just necessarily having the sounds here. So, we can try it with actual writing into the Elkonin boxes, right? So we put one letter per sound. I mean, one box per sound still, but what letters correlate to that sound? You might have words that have our digraphs, that it's 2 letters for one sound. For example, here I also have t, r, I, k. But notice that's still one sound made by 2 letters. I still give, the Elkonin boxes are still just 4 because it's 4 sounds. Same thing here, sh, a, k. Right here it says shack. But if I do something outside the Elkonin boxes, like the magic E, well, oh, this becomes shake. So if I had done sh, a, k, and I could tell the kids, it doesn't say shake yet, but we have to add our silent E, our magic E. Elkonin boxes are super simple. If you don't have time to run to the copier, you just draw them on there, right? And you know, you can have your dry erase boards, the little counters, and you're ready to go. For the word game one, I chose the word maker cups because I know some of us might be familiar with gliders. Well, this idea of the word maker cups is enforcing that age-old practice of having students blend the beginning consonants and the blends with rhymes or word families, like we had talked about, boat. That would be boat. This is similar to using the sliders, but much easier. So if you do sliders, they look pretty much like this here, where we have, say, spl, splash. I don't know if you can see them here. And again, you were just going to be pulling from here. Splash, and then you can say splat, spleen, splint. And see, those word gliders, depending on what you want them to practice, what onset or rhyme you want them to do, that's what you make. However, they're so tedious to make, and all that cutting and all that, it's going to take more time. So this is similar to that, but easier. So you just use your styrofoam coffee cups and write the beginning consonants and blends on the lips of the cup, and the rhymes or word families on the lips of the other cup. So students make words by spinning the cup, and then they write down their created words. So if you want them, of course, they can practice it, but if you want something that they're going to submit to you, you want them to write it down. Okay, so for example, you have your first coffee cup, and you have t, k. And then on the other cup, you have op, or whatever rhyme you want. So you have your onset, and you have your rhyme, and you put them together. And here on the internet, I was able to find this. Actually, you can have them just on one cup. You don't have to have them in several cups, unless you want to do, beyond that. Like for blending, you can also do this here. So that's quick, painless, and they're still doing that whole onset rhyme. And you can even collect them. They can even make some at home. For my final strategy, this is one that I used to like to use. It also goes way back, but I think it serves really good purpose with comprehension. This strategy is a great way to introduce a new text and have students practice knowledge of the literary elements. It's a pre-reading strategy that will activate the background by introducing vocabulary that will be encountered in the story. So it's, instead of asking, what do you think the story is going to be about? Let's look at the picture. You can go up a little bit more instead of just predicting from a picture. Let's predict from actual vocabulary. So what you do is you select that vocabulary or even phrases that you want from the text or about the text. The students work in teams to categorize the vocabulary and phrases into correct boxes, which will be character, setting, problem, outcomes, unknown words. So they categorize them, they sort them out, and then they create a gist statement or a probable passage kind of summary, telling what the story is probably about. So they kind of predict the summary, like it's about this. After reading the selection, they create a new gist statement as the summary of the text. So they go back and check the predicted gist statement. And this is a basic one. For example, a probable passage of Lily's Purple Plastic Purse by Kevin Hankes. So we have our words, Mr. Slinger, the new purse, school, Lily, sharing time, distracted Lily, bad drawing, note, letter. From here, I can predict where each of those would go. For example, Mr. Slinger, most kids right away predict, oh, he goes in characters. But if we come down to bad drawing, well, that gives a negative connotation. So I think this is part of problem. Well, what about distracted Lily? Distracted Lily, I think that also sounds like something that's not very positive. This probably is something to do with the problem also. And they go sorting, and I used to like to cut out like butcher paper, and the students, or even the chart paper, and the students would get theirs, and they can do a cooperative learning. I used to like to do the round table, so each kid can have a different marker, and that way I can see who is contributing it. So if I see, say red and blue, or the different colors, that lets me know. But that way they all contribute, and they just pass the chart paper. I predicted that Slinger is a character. Your turn. And we can discuss, well, I think this one right here goes into problem. Everyone agree? Yes, I write it in. And then after that, we come up with a gist statement. Mr. Slinger is going to have some sharing time in school, and I can put school here. However, Lily is distracted, and I'm using this to inform what I'm going to say here. Oh, I forgot to mention, outcomes can be like, what happens as a result. Unknown, like if they really just come to, I have no idea where this goes, this can be here. So after we read our text, we come back, we check our gist statement, and if it's right on, you can highlight the things that you got, right on. If not, we create a new summary statement, and then that'll be our more accurate summary of the selection. And that is the gist of my presentation. Thank you.